Hello and welcome to the fifth and final session in the first ever Coming to the Table learning series. All 5 of these sessions have been very well attended and they're all recorded and available for viewing on the Coming to the Table YouTube channel. Today's session is called Getting You Ready to Publish Your Family History and will be led by Charlotte Bocage. Charlotte has over 40 years of genealogy experience. She organizes family reunions for both sides of her family, was a guest genealogy lecturer for the UCLA Osher Lifelong Learning Program for 6 years, and has been a member of the Southern California Genealogical Society since 1999. She's currently the Education Committee Chair that directs the Kids Family History Camp and the Lunch and Learn Education Program. So welcome, Charlotte. Take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. And thank you everyone for joining us today. So I hope everyone has handouts, the agenda for today, and also the genealogy and publication style sheets. If not, like Tom said, they're on the email that was sent on Friday at 11:58 a.m. Okay. So if you don't have it, raise your hand. So I'll give you a minute or two. Okay.
I'm not able to print the one item. The handout genealogy publication style sheet, I'm unable to print it. Don't know why.
Yeah, because you're going to need that to follow along with me.
Yeah, it does, I saved it as a PDF and it cuts it off, and I tried to shift it. It still doesn't work. And so it's not doing too well, but I will keep trying.
Okay. Good luck. Okay, so that in mind, so let's get you started to publish your family history book. So for me, genealogy is a living history of your family, including the accomplishments, stories, and personalities of your family members, and not just a collection of names and dates, because that's what we've been involved in all of this time, are just names and dates. We need to put those names and dates together so that we can preserve our family stories, because we've all heard family stories throughout the years that are important to us. And so we need to preserve those family stories. And remember, Alex Haley heard his family stories, and look what he did with his family stories. So the agenda for today is things that you should have done, getting started, things to do, and publishing. Let me change. Okay, so why are you doing this? So these stories need to be passed down and celebrated. Every time a person dies, a library is lost. So you are preserving the stories within your family library. So can everyone see my PowerPoint?
You need to do the share screen again.
Oh, okay. Hang on. Okay, so
There we
can,
go.
okay. Okay, so can now everyone see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. So, like I said, ask yourself, why are you doing this? These stories need to be passed down and celebrated. Every time a person dies, a library is lost. And so we need to collect these stories so that we can preserve the library that each person has. So you've worked long and hard on doing your research and collecting your family history. If you want your information to live past you, you need to put it into a format that is presentable to your family, thereby creating a legacy so others can see the documents you have gathered to prove your family story. So here are some things that you should have already done. So have you read books or gone to Wikipedia to find out more information about the area or event that you are writing about? Have you checked out the guidebook called The Source? It's the guidebook of American genealogy by Loretto Sukes and Sandra Lubking. This book gives you a lot of information about genealogy and various topics that can be helpful to you. So did you interview your relatives? If you did you record it and transcribe it, excuse me, within 2 days of the interview? I recorded, excuse me. I recorded my great aunt's interview in the late 90s. I used one of those micro recorders that I probably cannot find the technology on how to transcribe it now. So her interview with her stories that she told me are now lost forever. If you did record it, did you transcribe it within 2 days of the interview? What stories will you include, if any? So did you gather documents and photos from family and friends? Did you go to various libraries and collect information from them? Did you find newspaper articles with your family member's name in it? Do you have obituaries or funeral programs that have information about your family? And did you go to the state archives and collect information from there? So here are more things that you should have done. Do you all have a genealogy software program? Please say yes, because you really need it. If you're going to get organized and you're going to do a professional job, because that's what the style sheets are for, to present your work in a professional manner. And if you're going to do a professional job, then you need a genealogy software program to get you there. My genealogy software program has notes, and in that section, I type the stories I've heard from my family. My cousin Joyce told me how they used to walk around New Orleans instead of catching the bus during the Jim Crow era. My mother told me the story of how she used to have to sit in the balcony of the movie theater. They would throw popcorn down on the heads of white people below during the Jim Crow era because they were forced to sit in the balcony and they weren't allowed to sit down in the orchestra section. So in my genealogy software program, I have attached photos of where my mom and most of her sisters went to school. I have also written those stories in my genealogy software program. I don't tell what program I use because I feel a genealogy software program is personal to you. What I like, you may hate. because there is one genealogy software program that lots of people like, but for me, it's very difficult to use. So does your program have a narrative text in it? Can you put your family stories in it? Can you add your pictures to your genealogy software program? If you don't already have a genealogy software program, these should be some of the things that would make you consider which one to buy. Something that has the ability to give narrative text, include your family stories and notes or elsewhere, and to add pictures to the information that it applies to, not just random pictures any old place. So now that you have all of that done, let's get started. So for me, creating an outline helps me to focus on the story I want to tell. I use an outline so I can arrange my thoughts on paper. I'm a tactile person, a visual person, so I need to be able to look and see things. I can't think in the abstract as well as lots of other people can. And so therefore, for me, an outline is what I need. My cousin, however, she and I are writing a book together. We're writing separate characters, and then we're going to combine the two characters. But my cousin becomes the person that her character is, and that's how she writes. She doesn't use an outline like I do. I have developed my character and created a story around my character. And my cousin seems to just go along with the flow. However she feels about her character for that day is what her character does. I'm not saying one is better than the other because it works for her and creating an outline works for me. So if you're more like my cousin, then go with it. But if you're more like me, then create an outline so that you can develop what you want to tell in the story. So both are correct. You just have to find which pattern works for you. So you also need to know who your audience is. Will it be your immediate family, your extended family? Will it be genealogy libraries or perhaps a lineage society? So what family will you start with? Will you start with the family that has the most stories, the family that is most interesting, the family that has the most information? Well, I started with my dad's family because it had all of those things. It had the most stories, it was the most interesting, and it had the most information. My dad's side was an important New Orleans, with the New Orleans jazz scene in the early 1900s. And therefore they were, my grandfather and his brothers and brother-in-law were all interviewed for the Hogan Jazz Archives. And therefore I had a lot of information to start with. So consequently, I started with my dad's family. And don't forget your sources. How many times have you seen published works without sources? Don't forget about the bibliography of sources either, as an endnote or a footnote. I prefer footnotes. I like to look at the bottom of the page to see where the person got that information. It drives me crazy to look at the end of the chapter or the end of the book to find the endnote. But if endnotes work for you, go for it, because what works for me may not work for you. This whole lecture is all about the choices that you make for your family history book, not the choices I have made for mine. Okay, so Let's make that perfectly clear. This is your choices that you make. And to be even more, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, let me not choose that word. So let me tell you about Evidence Explained by Elizabeth Shown Mills. She's the source documentation guru. It's published by Genealogical Publishing Company. The third edition was published and it helps you to cite your sources correctly, because you only have to read maybe the first chapter to learn how the book works. The book mostly conducts a lot of information through templates, and it shows you exactly how to write a particular source documentation for a census, but it also shows you how to document the family heirloom that you may have. So you need to, if you're going to do a professional job, then you need to have professionally done source documentations, and Evidence Explained will be that book for you. And writing for me, there's the genealogy software program that I use uses templates from her books to document the information that I need for the source documentation. And if your particular genealogy software program doesn't have those templates, then writing a footnote is just as easy as you did for your research paper in grade school, high school, college. It's really not that difficult, because as you know, without a source, you won't know how to get back to the information that you're telling your family member that you found. So writing sources is very important. So you need to start with a story. Is there a common thread throughout your family? Did a lot of your family male members go to war and this is their story? Or perhaps you had a circus family member and this is their story. Perhaps an interesting event happened. Was your family member or ancestor with the space program? My uncle Gerald worked on the shuttle program in New Orleans, Louisiana. Was your ancestor in the theater, perhaps a rocket scientist or a famous surgeon? And when you write the story, you need to use all 5 senses in the narrative. You need to be able to visualize that person that they're talking about. You need to be able to hear the bird chirping. You need to be able to touch the stone. You need to be able to smell the coffee, and you need to be able to taste the cookie. All of these things that you are writing about, you need to be able to let your audience know that this is the feelings that they need to engender. And please don't preach. This is not for preaching. This is to tell your family story. This page is a copy that I commissioned my cousin's daughter, Roshana Chapatel. I gave my cousin's daughter the details about my 2 times great-grandparents, Octave and Germaine Bocage. They are her 3 times great-grandparents. And so I gave her the details and the little bit about how they grew up in Louisiana. And she wrote a full-page, absolutely wonderful essay on my 2 times great-grandparents. And she touched on all of the 5 censuses that I talked about earlier. So they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So will you include pictures in your work, in your book or on your website? Who has the copyright on the picture? You will need written permission from the owner of the picture. You can add pictures and details about the picture, however you publish your information. So this is a picture of my grandfather and his brother and his brother-in-law in early New Orleans jazz. So this is my grandfather right here with the banjo. This is Charles Bocage. This is my Uncle Peter, my great Uncle Peter. And this is my great uncle Lorenzo Tio Jr. on saxophone. And they were part of the Piron New Orleans Jazz Orchestra. They recorded for Victor Records before it became RCA Victor in 1923. This was their trip to New York City, and they played at the Roseland Ballroom. They also played at the Cotton Club, among other places. And so I've included this picture in all of the Bocage family books that I've printed. So what else will you include? Pedigree charts, written or handwritten or printed out, family group sheets, census records, vital records, meaning birth, marriage, and death records, perhaps handwritten letters, or none of the above and just a series of stories, or perhaps a book about just the pictures that you have. So you need to make these decisions on what you're going to include in your family history book. What will you need? You're going to need a cover page, a book title, author. I included a thank you page because I wanted to thank all of the people that helped me get there, all of the people that allowed me to sleep in their extra bedroom, all of the people that gave me documents and information. And so I wanted to thank them. And so I put a thank you page in my family history book. You can also include the dates and places covered in the book, any copyright information, because I copyright all of my books because I don't want anything published on the internet without me knowing about it. Because some of my family members have done that, and it took me a lot not to call them up and tell them, give them a piece of my mind. You need to include a preface because that's for your comments. You possibly need to include a foreword because that's what someone of status, maybe perhaps your council person, your mayor, your elected official could talk about the book. You can include your family trees, any photographs, individual stories, and documents. And you need to decide whether or not you want an ISBN. Most private publishers, meaning you, don't need an ISBN, but if you do, an ISBN is an international standard book number, according to Wikipedia. And it's the numeric commercial book identifier, which is intended to be unique. Publishers purchase ISBNs from an affiliate of the International ISBN Agency. An ISBN is assigned to each separate edition and variation, except for reprintings of a publication. The initial ISBN identification format was devised in 1967 based on a 9-digit standard book numbering system created in 1966. Now it's up to 13 digits. So you also need to choose what type of paper you're going to use. Will it be photo paper for front and back? Will it be cardstock? You need to decide on the quality of the paper for the rest of the book too. So, where and how to publish. So one of my genealogy colleagues published all of his books at Costco. It's really great because once you input the book to Costco, you can send the link to all of your family members and they can buy the book themselves. That means you also have to buy your own book, but at least you don't have to worry about sending the book to anybody. You can use Shutterfly, you can use a private online printer, you can use FedEx or your local printer that you may be friendly with. You can also try an ebook, and there are many other options that are out there. Each of these possibilities has their own criteria. So you need to go to their website or contact them to find out what the criteria would be. Write that down and include it on your genealogy style sheet. So you need to be able to set a flexible deadline. Will it be for a family reunion? Will it be a birthday present for a person that is reaching a certain age? Will it be for Thanksgiving? Because our family gets together for Thanksgiving. We come from all over the country to go to my cousin Eva's house in New Orleans, and she throws a big bash, you know, from family members and friends that live in New Orleans. In 2018, we took a picture and there were, gosh, about 70 people in that picture. And it was absolutely wonderful. Will you do your family history book as a Christmas present? Our second and third family reunion in 2002 and 2004, I produced a family history book for each reunion. I used my genealogy software program to print out the necessary pages, and I created the rest of the book freehand. So here is the front page of the book. Excuse me. My cousin's husband developed the logo for our t-shirts, and I used it for the front page of the book. As you can see here, the book is comb bound because I didn't know any better at the time. This was my very first book. I didn't know what I was doing really because I'd never done this before, but I really enjoyed the whole process. This is our second book for our 2004 reunion. We had reunions every other year because some of my family members got tired of meeting new people, which I never understood. I always wanted to meet all of the people that I could in my family, and some of my family members weren't like that. So hang on, let me take a swig of water. So again, this was the t-shirts for our 2004 family reunion. And again, I used the logo for the t-shirts for our family history book. Because my 2 times great grandfather, Charlotte Bocage, was a boat builder. And that's the theme of the boats that are on both of the books. So don't get overwhelmed. This should be fun, not stressful. If it's not, then you need to hire someone to do it for you and include the fee in the cost of each book. I have had a whole lot of fun doing all of the books, collecting the stories and information, and you too should have fun producing the book like I did. So order information. You need to send out notification to your family and friends and whomever is going to purchase the book about the upcoming family history book that with an estimated cost. Are you going to sell it? Because perhaps you're independently wealthy and you might perchance want to give it away. If you are going to give it away, you still need to find the money to print as many copies as you want to give away. Or will you donate a copy to a library or an archive? You need to be able to include enough money in the book cost to get a free book for yourself and or for a library. So you also need to include packaging and postage fees on the order form by taking the manuscript to the post office and get an estimate. I took the manuscript and the envelope that I wanted to mail it in to the post office and asked them to weigh it so that they could tell me how much it would cost. And I also asked the post person whether or not it would be okay for me to mail it with a comb binding in an envelope, or do I need to package it in a book, pardon me, in a box. And she said, no, it would be fine. She said, just make sure that the comb binding doesn't come through the envelope. And so I did that, and it was fine. They all got them perfectly well, no problems there. And then after you find out what the estimate is, then you need to go up to the next postage level. And if you want a copy of the order form that I created to order the book, then just email me. My email address is at the end of the lecture, and if it's not already on the handouts, and just email me and I'll send you what I created, and then you can adapt it for whatever family information you need. So, things to do. So some of the things that I will show you on the style sheet, I've already talked about. So I will show you how the publication style sheet works. And this will be a place for you to show the decisions that you made before you go to print. So you need to choose a format to print from or to publish to. So if you created a lot of your information in Microsoft Word, you need to keep it there, or you need to transfer it to Microsoft PowerPoint, because my friend that created his book at Costco, he used Microsoft PowerPoint to create the book, and I just haven't figured out exactly how he did that yet. And so, but if you know how to create a book in PowerPoint, be my guest. Or perhaps you're not going to create a book, you're just going to publish on a family website, or perhaps a public website. You need to choose a binding format. Will it be coil or wire? Or will it be a comb binding like I've used? Or will it be leather bound? You need to use the following genealogy style sheet to prepare the book. Before I published my first family history book for our 2002 Bocage family reunion, I got the basic idea of a style sheet from my friend Lisa Lee. And she gave me the style sheet, and then I reformatted it to suit my needs for genealogy and for publishing a professionally looking genealogy family history book. So I hope everyone now has the style sheet format so we can walk through it. So up here will be the questions that you're going to need to answer. Here are the The subject are graphics. So you're going to need to choose from all of these options. Will your photos be a box or in a frame or nothing at all? Will your photos be centered or left justified? Will it have captions? Will you figure numbers with your photos? Will you include documents? Will you include the signatures on the documents that you have? Or will you use clip art? So these are the questions for graphics. These are the options that you have. And to the right is the decision that you're going to make about those options that you have in front of you. So don't forget, if you use photos and letters, you need to respect the copyright. It is 72 years from the owner's death. My friend has letters from her mom and dad because her dad sold planes to Air India, Air Japan, and the like. And so he was gone a lot. And so her mom and dad wrote back and forth to each other. She's going to have to wait another 66 years to publish those letters. She can print them out and add them to her collection, but she can't publish them and sell them and make money from them. So here are some more choices that you're going to have to choose from. So we're talking about layout now. So what is your page size? Will you use a regular 8.5 by 11? Will you use a 7 by 9 or a 6 by 9 size page? What font size will you use? So these are the questions about layout that you have. These are your options, and these are the styles that you selected. So my PowerPoint instructor suggested that no more than 3 font types be used in any given text. Will you fully justify your text, or will you left justify? If you fully justify, it distributes the text evenly between the margins. It gives your document a clean, crisp edge so that it looks more professional. So that choice is up to you. Will you include your citations as endnotes or footnotes? We've had that discussion. Will you indent your paragraphs or not indent your paragraphs? You need to choose the spacing between the paragraphs, and you need to choose a consistent bullet list. Don't have one page with one type of bullet list and a different type of bullet list on a different page. That doesn't look professional. You need to choose one set of bullets. And how are you going to write your unknown names? Will you just write a question mark? Will you put parentheses around it, brackets, or other things? So you need to be aware of how you are going to lay out your document. It's not changing. Hang on, it's not changing. There we go. Okay, next are numbers. So, question is, are you going to write out the numbers? So the options you have are all numbers under 10 are written 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Over 10, you use, no, the other way around, I'm sorry. Numbers under 10 are written out O-N-E-T-W-O-T-H-R-E-E. Over 10, you use the Arabic numbers. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and so on. Over 999, do you comma or not comma? That is the question. So when you're having double dates, are you going to put a slash between it for 1776, 1777, or will you abbreviate the second set of numbers, put a slash between them and abbreviate the second set of numbers? So those are the choices that you have. Also, when you have a number range, are you going to abbreviate the second set of numbers, or will you put all of the numbers the way they are listed? So between numbers, are you going to put the dash so that there are no spaces between the dash, or will you put a space between the dash? See, these are things that you need to be consistent about, and that's why you have to make the decision before you go to publication so that everything will be consistent, and you will automatically catch yourself whether or not you're doing it correctly. So fractions, are you going to go 1/2, or does your Word program or Mac program automatically turn 1/2 into 1/2? And we all know how the Family History Library film numbers go. They put commas within their film numbers, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. So these are the choices that you can make. So the family history item numbers, are you going to put commas after each section? Item 2, comma, part 2, part 4, comma, section 8, or will you just leave it the way it is? DAR application numbers. Are you going to put NO period, or are you going to use the number sign, or are you going to use NO period and put commas? So you also need to check with the DAR and find out exactly how they want you to indicate your information when you submit it to them. And subscript numbers. Does your Word program, excuse me, does your Word program automatically change 2ND to subscript? Hang on, I need some more water. Sorry about that. And which numbering system for your pedigree charts and family group sheets will you use? The NGSQ is the National Genealogical Society Quarterly, the Register, and the Untitled charts. So here is the Untitled explanation, and I'll show you the chart in the middle, in a minute. The Untitled allows for the numbering of ancestors beginning with a descendant. The system allows one to derive an ancestor's number without compiling the complete list, and allows one to derive an ancestor's relationship based on their number. The number of a person's father is twice their own number, and the number of a person's mother is twice their own plus 1, according to Wikipedia. So if you've never seen an Untitled chart or knew how to pronounce it, here's what it looks like. So here is you, you're number 1. And then number 2 is your dad, number 3 is your mom, and so on. So will you use an Untitled chart to chart your family history? Or will you use the, excuse me, the register system. The register system uses both common numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and Roman numerals, I, and IV. The system is organized by generation. For example, generations are grouped separately. The system was created in 1870 for the use in the New England Historical and Genealogical Register, published by the New England Historic and Genealogical Society, based in Boston, Massachusetts, according to Wikipedia. So if you have family members that are in New England, everybody needs to go to the New England Historic and Genealogical Society because it is absolutely fantastic. So let me show you what that looks like. And hopefully my hyperlink works. And it doesn't seem to be working, so hang on, let me get back to my Word document. Okay. So can everyone see my Word document?
No, it's still on the PowerPoint, Charlotte.
Okay. Try it. Let me try and make the hyperlink work again. Yay, okay. So it worked this time. Okay, so this is what the register system looked like. Okay. So you can see how it uses.
It's still just the arrow is all that's on the screen.
Oh, okay.
What you're showing on your screen is the PowerPoint itself. So you need to close that down and open up the other page you're trying to see.
Okay. So I need to close down my PowerPoint?
Yeah, just shrink it. Don't just minimize it.
Okay.
Yep, click right there.
Okay. Register system?
You need to minimize that whole PowerPoint. Up at the top, just click right now. Your arrow is right on the minimizer. Click that.
Okay. Can you see my PowerPoint or my Word?
PowerPoint.
Oh.
So on your screen, you need to be able to see what you see is what we see.
Yeah. Yeah, I at a loss. So I minimized my PowerPoint and I'm in my Word document. What else do you suggest, Tom?
Well, Tim is saying share your browser, not the PowerPoint.
Says my sharing is paused.
Huh. Well, maybe skip that one and just
Go
go
on.
on.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Do you see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so the next system that we're going to talk about is the National Genealogical Society Quarterly. And it's published by the National Genealogical Society, which is headquartered in Falls Church, Virginia, which uses this method in its articles. It is sometimes called the record system or the modified register system because it derives from the register system. The most significant difference between the NGSQ and the register system is the method of numbering for children who are not carried forward into future generations. The NGSQ system assigns a number to every child, whether or not that child is known to have a progeny, and the register system does not. Other differences between the two systems are mostly stylistic, according to Wikipedia. So since I got this information from Wikipedia, you can go to Wikipedia and Google both systems, NGSQ and register system, and you can see exactly what I hoped to talk about in my hyperlink, but was unable to. Sorry about that. That's technology for you. So the next we're going to talk about is abbreviations. So are you going to use abbreviations in text, in notes, or will you avoid abbreviations altogether? How will you write out county? Will you abbreviate county as CO? Because sometimes that could be a problem because some people may think it means company, but if you don't abbreviate it, then they know it means county. But that's a decision for you to make, not for me to make. Or how will you abbreviate the state, or will you? Will you write out the state, or will you use the post office abbreviation for the state? So the style of the book. Will you use an en dash to separate the numbers? Will you use serial commas? With serial commas, red comma, white comma, and blue? Or will you use red comma, white, and blue without the comma between white and? The date format. We've all been taught to put the month, the day, and the year, but it's up to you if you want to use the day, the month, and the year. Book titles. Will you underline it or use italics? The time. Will you use AM capital without any periods? Will you use small caps? Will you use small letters, A period, M period? Or will you use capital letters, A period, M period? Will you use commas before and or after for junior or senior? So you're going to put a period after junior Will you use a comma after junior? Or will you not use a comma? Maiden name listings. John Jones and Mary Smith Jones. Will you put this parentheses around Smith to denote that Mary's maiden name is Smith? Contractions. Will you use contractions or do not use contractions? My English teacher always told me, do not use contractions when you're writing. So, but that's up to you. And that was my English teacher, not yours. Specific words. Will you, how will you write email? Will you write it all together or will you put a dash in between E and mail? Because remember, it means electronic mail. So, United States, will you put U.S. or US, or will you write out United States? These are your questions and your options to make the decision about. So, formatting your page. The page numbers, will you use alternating corners or center the bottom, or will all of your page numbers always be on the top left corner? So wherever you put your page numbers, you need to write that down or circle it and let yourself know exactly how you want your page numbers to look. Will you use an M dash, which is a space before and or after or not? So that's your choice to make. Names. Will you bold surnames? Because we're all taught to do that. Will you use small caps? Will you use italics? Or will you use regular text? And how will your nicknames look? Will your nickname Bud be in parentheses, in quotation marks or in parentheses? And various spellings of a name. Will you change the spelling of a name? Because in the 1870 census, my Bocage, B-O-C-A-G-E, was spelled B-O-R-K-E-Y-E. Well, I kept the spelling of the name B-O-R-K-E-Y-E when I'm talking about the 1870 census because that's how I found it. But the rest of any document that I talk about my family, I spell my name the way everyone else has always spelled it, B-O-C-A-G-E. So also, what will you include? Will you include pedigree charts? Will you include family group sheets? Will you include census records? And if you do include census records, make sure they understand what they're looking at. Because a lot of these people that you're giving your family history book to have no clue about what is on a census record. So I would suggest that if you get your census record from Ancestry, I would also include that face page or information page that you can print out and include on the front of the census record, and then on the back, you can print out this exact census record and perhaps put indicators of where your family member is on the census record so it would be easy for them to find. Will you include birth, marriage, and death records? Will you include handwritten letters, and if so, which ones? Will you just include the stories? Will you just include pictures? These are your decisions that you have to make so that you can have a professional looking book. The cover page, will it have a photo on it? Will it have your book title, author, name, the dates covered in the book, the copyright information, the preface? table of contents, thank you page, family trees, individual stories. And if you have individual stories, which one? Any documents that you are going to use, any photographs? And will you include an ISBN number? So what type of paper are you going to use? Will you use photo paper, cardstock? Will you, what kind of paper will you use inside the book? Your publishing, will it be through Costco, Shutterfly, a private printer like FedEx or a local printer? Or will it be an ebook? So don't forget to send notifications to your family and others about the fact that you're publishing this book. You need to choose whether or not you're going to sell it, give it away, donate it to a library or an archive. Include packaging information and postage. And don't forget, if you want a free book, to include enough money in the fee to cover the free book for you and perhaps another library. So now that you have everything all together, you've made all of the choices that you need to make. You need to print the book out to see how it looks. You need to ask family and friends to review your document and to make corrections or additions to your draft, because perhaps it could be a long shot, but perhaps when they read through your book, it might engender additional stories that they are thinking about that they never thought about before until your book was presented to them. So then we go to publishing. Now that your book has been corrected and all of the information is correct in your book, you need to decide whether or not you're going to print it a hard copy or will you print it online only. So hopefully after all of this, this is what you look like. Like I said earlier, it should be fun for you. It shouldn't be a chore. It shouldn't be something that that tears out your hair, makes you turn gray or even grayer. It should be fun. So here's my contact information. If you want, like I said, if you want any anything that I've talked about earlier, just email me and I'll send you the form that I created to order the book and anything else that you are interested in helping you publish your book. I'll leave it up here for a minute more. rubymoon01@yahoo.com. Lots of people think my name is Ruby, but it's not. Okay, so any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
In terms of researching when it comes to maiden names, I'm always conflicted whether to put in the married name or the family name, and or both, or so like my great aunt was born Rhodes and she married she's Pritchett, and so how do I?
Well, I can't make that decision for you, but my suggestion is to include the maiden name. And how you write it out will be up to you based on the information that I gave you. And my reasoning for including the maiden name is because if anyone reads your book later on down the line, that would be helpful if you haven't done all of the research on the Rhodes family. They won't know that she was a Rhodes, and or they won't look to see any other information that you may not have already found. And so another tricky thing about maiden names, like I said earlier, I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana, and my mother was born Cynthia Louise Bloom. But I have seen her indicated in a lot of government documents in Louisiana as Mrs. Cynthia Bloom. I've also seen her as Mrs. Charles Bocage, which is her married name. I've seen her as Mrs. Cynthia Bloom Bocage. I've seen her as Mrs. Cynthia Louise Bloom Bocage. And so, excuse me, being the genealogist that I am, I'm not saying that you have to do it, not just you, but the people who are listening to me. I have included all of those references in all of the documents that are referred to her in that manner. And at the beginning of her story, I list all of the ways that her name has been listed. And so that way, no matter who comes behind me and does the research on the Bloom family, they will know that Cynthia Louise Bloom Bocage is still my mother. Mrs. Cynthia Bloom is not a wife of John Bloom. She is the wife of Charles Bocage. And so I've included all of those at the beginning of her story so that people will know exactly who they're reading about.
So when you were doing the research, did you just like follow the trail as it led down through the names?
Yes.
Or, okay, so you did like separate searches for Bloom and Bocage and all the different variations.
Yes, and the way I found a lot of her variations of her name, because all of those, the ways that I stated are legal in Louisiana. Sometimes when she's mentioned as Mrs. Cynthia Bloom, it has comma, wife of Charles Joseph Bocage Sr., but not all the time. And so that's why I indicate all of the ways that her name is listed. And I usually found them by happenstance because I was looking for her or looking for my dad, and I found that this is how she was listed on any particular government document.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Anyone else?
So I want to ask a question, but
Sure.
I'm reluctant because I think I may be in the wrong place to ask this question. I have more genealogical history than I can manage. I have history and documents and stories back to the 1600s, and
Good for you.
I'm overwhelmed by it. And my intention is to, rather than try to write a historical, history, I would like to frame this as a creative nonfiction or a historical novel. And I particularly am interested in one one aspect of this story, which was the slaves in Haiti who, I might get tearful as I talk about this, who helped my ancestors escape. And I want to honor that story. And I'm so troubled about how to incorporate the voice of the enslaved people in that story and still, you know, and honor them. So this may be the wrong place to ask this question or explore this, but I'm just overwhelmed. But I've gotten quite a bit written, but I just can't go down that route that you're talking about of this detailed information. I would have, you know, I have boxes of things that already. So anyway, I'm just stuck.
Well, let me make two suggestions to you. One is, how do you eat an elephant?
Well, yes, absolutely.
One bite at a time, right?
Right.
So what you could do with your monumentous, absolutely wonderful collection of family history is take one family at a time, because that's what I'm doing with my friend Linda. She has over 3,000 people in her genealogy software program. And when we publish it, we're going to publish one family line at a time from one side of the family, probably her mom's side, because her mom's family goes back to 1600s. So she has a lot of information like you do. So we're going to take one family at a time and publish it, and then go on to the next, do the research and then go on to the next family. So that's one suggestion. Another suggestion is about your story that you're writing. Historical fiction is exactly that. Whatever you choose to put in the book is what it is. I have written several short stories about my family. And when I write a short story, and a lot of it is true, I highlight it in bold letters so that people coming behind me know that that part is the truth. Everything else is, well, maybe so. You can't do that in a book, but you need to document exactly what is true and what isn't. The thing that I don't like about historical fiction is that most of it is fiction. And so why put the historical name in front of it? You know, if you have these dates and names and places about these people, and why not tell the true story about these people as far as you know it?
I would have to make up a lot about their character. I would have to embellish their characters in ways that because I don't know them. And so let me ask you one more question. Is there anybody who I could turn to for help?
Yeah, there are a couple of genealogical historical novels written. I would suggest you read some of them. Some of them include a pedigree chart. I'd also suggest that if you want to create characters of the enslaved people that assisted in your family, then perhaps you could read some books about enslaved people that were written. My friend Mason, she didn't write the book. Her great-great-grandfather wrote a book about being an enslaved person. Anyway, there are a lot of people who have slave narratives that you can read about. You can go to the Library of Congress because they have a large collection of slave narratives that you can glean from and find out information about how these people talked. It really bothers me when, yes, I know that a lot of enslaved people didn't use the King's English, but please don't make them as silly and stupid as a lot of other people have done in the past. I can tell that you want to honor these people, and I trust that you won't do that, you know. So I'm just voicing my opinion about, you know, how Black people have been portrayed in the past, and that really bothers me.
Yeah, I was considering just using normal, you know, everyday language, like,
Oh,
you know,
good,
just,
good.
it was tempting, but that's like, no, that doesn't work.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Enjoy the process.
It's been years in the making already.
Yeah. Yeah, my cousin and I are on year 5 of writing this book. But it's not about family history. It's about two girls that knew each other in high school. Any other questions?
That was a really good presentation, Charlotte. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Antoinette.
Yeah, very, very nice.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about the technological glitches, but you know, it worked for me.
Yeah, it worked for all of us.
I have a quick
Sorry.
question. Do we have
Yes.
time?
Sure.
So if you put it in a paper form, you can copyright it, right? If you put it on a website, there's no protection. People can just steal it, right?
Right. But you can copyright it, not that it
Oh, you can.
difference. You know, you can put your little C down there,
Hmm.
but people can still steal it.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. That's the problem I have with putting my information online,
Yeah.
because my cousin, who shall remain nameless, has done that to me. Claimed that all of the information he has on his website is stuff that he found. And I know it's not, because
You found it.
not only did I find it, but I put some wrong information on there on purpose so that I would know. And I caught him.
Oh, good for you.
I think a copyright should, I mean, it's easier to cut and paste off an online document, but it doesn't make it legal just because it's online. I'm not positive about this, but I'm a librarian, so I've looked a lot at copyright.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you publish a book online, that should be protected by copyright, just as if you had, I mean, because you could just take that and, you know, download it and print it and put a copyright. It's the same thing, and it's the same copyright, whether it's online or in print. So copyright is copyright. It's
Right.
just easier to get away with it
Yeah, it is.
if it's online. Now, if it's on a website, that may be different, but
Yeah.
publishing is publishing. So,
Mhm.
yeah. And ISBN is really easy to get.
Mhm.
And you can send a book to the Library of Congress that way,
Yes.
with a copyright. I mean, with an ISBN. So,
Yeah, publishing it on a website, your own private website or a public website, would make it easier for them to rip you off, let's say. But publishing it on ebook through Amazon or any of the others will make it a little more difficult, because then they have to pay to print out the book each time they print it out. And that can be challenging for some. Any other questions?
I think we have time for maybe one more, Charlotte, if anyone has any.
Oh, I'll jump in there. I didn't think this was a very big question, but I'll throw it out there anyway.
Oh, sure.
I was surprised about the use of family group sheets in a book. I wouldn't necessarily have thought to use that, only because I find those to be either somebody else's work, hopefully with citations on it, or my own work. but not necessarily original documents. So what do you find useful about using a family group sheet in your book?
Well, the way I laid my book out is I put the pedigree chart at the beginning because my 2 times great-grandparents had 21 children, but only 6 lived to adulthood. And so only 6 of those kids actually had children. And of those 6 children that lived to adulthood, I put the family group sheet to indicate the separation between each of the children's families. And so I listed all of the children on the family group sheet. Fortunately, they only had 2 or 3 kids, and so it was okay. And then after the family group sheet, I had like the census records that they were in and any birth, marriage, and death records. And then I went on to the next child and so on. And so I used the family group sheet to separate the kids and to indicate who the kids were and put all of the information about that particular person within that family group sheet. And that's the way I use the family group sheet.
Okay, so it's a good organizational tool, something
Yes,
quick and
yeah.
easy for people to be able to see. Okay.
And not that it made any difference to anybody else, because I'm the only person in my family that's interested in all of this, you know. So they may not have understood what the family group sheet was for, but it helped me to organize my family in a more easier, faster manner and make it more logically carrying on from one child to the next.
Okay, good, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, thank you, Charlotte. Thank you for everyone who participated today. This has been a really successful series and a wonderful wrap-up to a very successful series. And we're already beginning the planning stages for the next learning series that will likely begin at some point in the next few months. So stay tuned, and thanks everyone for being at the table.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.